And my next guest this evening, now knowing the science behind the health of our rivers is one thing, but using it effectively is another. Professor Bill Dennison is from the University of Maryland Centre for Environmental Science. He's a marine scientist. Good evening.
Hi, Kelly. It's great to be here on the banks of this beautiful river and listening to some great music.
It really is something special, isn't it? Quite a gorgeous night tonight. Now, firstly, you come from a state with abundant waterways and coastlines, and the magnificent, is it Chesapeake Bay? What do you think Queensland can learn about river resilience?
Well, in Chesapeake Bay, I guess we have the honor of being the most studied estuary in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We've got
Why
more.
Is that?
Well, it's near the national capital for one. We have many universities that are on the shores of the bay. We've had 100 years of very serious science going on in the region, and we've got a very well monitored system. We've got lots of buoys out in the water. We've got rivers that are being telemetry data back. So we've got a lot of data streaming in. We calculate we get about 8 or 10 million data points a year in Chesapeake Bay.
A lot.
So we're very intensively monitored, and so we're also intensely managed. We've got 6 U.S. states, the national capital, and we've got a lot of attention, national and international attention on what we do there.
You say intensely managed. We've got 6 states, and I thought, oh, that sounds like too many cooks. And
it often is.
Having come to Queensland and just sort of having I don't know if this is your first time here, but what did you think of the river?
Well, it's not my first time here, so
Okay,
I did get to do a 10-year stint at University of Queensland, so I got a chance to experience the river.
You know it better than I do then.
I crossed it every day on my way to work. I lived over on the South Shore. One of the things that in coming from North America with this model from Chesapeake Bay that's permeated in the sciences and our European colleagues, we had to unlearn a lot of that in Australia. Australia is fundamentally different in the way the waterways work.
Really? How so?
Well, this is the most variable climate in the world. So you've got the pulses that we're talking, the EVA and others were talking about earlier, the droughts punctuated by these extreme flood events. We have a more consistent flow. We have snow melt in the winter and flow year round. And so we end up with stratified water, stratified being warm, fresher water sitting on top of colder, saltier water. And that creates problems in getting oxygen to the deeper water. But it also is the way that the fish and the migrate through the system, and it structures the whole system. That physics changes the biology. Here in Queensland, it's not stratified in that way. It's mixed, and so the stratification is a horizontal change. So there's the gradients going from the mouth of the Brisbane River to over to the eastern Moreton Bay with dugongs, turtles, and whales now is quite dramatic and very different than the kinds of gradients that we see in North America and Europe.
How does that make it either more difficult or easy to then improve the health of a waterway?
I think that the systems are both in the Australian system with the pulses are more difficult to manage in the sense that you have to manage year round for only 5 days of flow, and people forget that swale, that low place in the ground, which is dry 360 days a year, has to be managed for that 5 days when it does have water flowing through it. In Chesapeake, I think it's a little easier because the streams are permanent, and it's easier to kind of manage the riparian zone. So sometimes I think it's a bigger challenge with that pulse system. But it's a challenge everywhere, globally, to manage our waterways well, and that's one of the things that brings us always back to this International River Symposium to learn those lessons from around the world.
Professor Bill Dennison is from the University of Maryland Centre for Environmental Science. You're with Kelly Higgins-Devine, and this is a very special broadcast, The Night the Rivers Sing. We're talking with experts from River Symposium, which is happening in Brisbane at the moment. A key element of your job is to communicate science. What are the obstacles to that happening?
Well, we've got a whole lot of alternative facts and fake news that are flooding both the social media, but also in it's permeated in the traditional media as well. So we're challenged to get our message across, where we have this careful acquisition of data and curating that data into information and knowledge that can be superseded by less rigorous facts that are thrown out there. So that's becoming a challenge to identify what we've carefully collected and assimilated and integrated into knowledge. And so I think we have to figure out ways to get our message out about the stuff that we do know well, and we do know a lot. We still have a lot to learn. It's an ongoing learning process, and particularly since the world is changing faster than it's ever changed before. So it's a big challenge, and it's something that I see that we haven't quite coped with yet. I think the scientists have been very careful, very reticent about being accurate about what we're saying. Sometimes our voice gets we have too many other voices out there that dominate the news, and we're not getting our message properly out.
As a marine scientist, then, how does the health of a waterway affect what goes out into an ocean? What are you finding?
Well, yeah, the ocean is the ultimate repository of everything that we do on the land. And one of the biggest problems we're seeing emerging is the plastics that we see accumulating out in the middle of the ocean gyres, but also on the beaches and the most remote parts of the world.
Tops of mountains, and you find microplastics everywhere.
Yeah. And one of the little facts I've learned recently from one of my graduate students is that we consume, humans, in about a 3-week period, plastic equivalent to a credit card.
Okay.
So we're ingesting plastic in everything we eat and drink.
It's a frightening.
It is.
Frightening fact. Yes.
Chewing those credit cards.
Stop it.
It's not good.
No. Well, Professor Dennison, it's been great having a chat with you, and I hope the River Symposium is a valuable time for you here in Brisbane. I know that people enjoy hearing you speak.
It is always fun to come to River Symposium. I've been coming since the beginning because it's one of the few times, and I go to a lot of other scientific conferences with my scientific colleagues. I usually come out of those fairly depressed about the state of the situation. I come out of a River Symposium inspired with hope, because these great stories of people that have grouped together to solve problems and move it forward and come up with resilient rivers. It's really exciting.
Thank you so much. This is ABC Radio Brisbane and Queensland.